This image was taken on September 3rd, 1997, just nearby to the airport that serves the Cambodian capital of Phnom Penh. It depicts the aftermath of the crash of a passenger plane that was operated by Vietnam Airlines. Flight 815 crashed short of the runway here in poor weather. The circumstances surrounding the plane, its pilots, and the airport itself are worth examining to uncover how this crash killed so many people. The aircraft in question in today's video is one we are yet to discuss on the channel. The Tupolev 134 was a regional jet developed in the Soviet Union. First developed in the early 1960s, the jet is part of a long-gone era in aviation. Today, the only airline to operate the plane is the North Korean airline Air Koryo. The plane did stick around for many years even after the collapse of the Soviet Union in various parts of the world, and for a time were plentiful on the second-hand market, with over 800 of the planes built. Vietnam was one such country the Tupolev 134 found itself in. Aviation in Vietnam was going through a massive restructuring during the 1990s. Similar to that of China, the National Vietnamese Airline was owned and ran by the Civil Aviation Administration of Vietnam. In 1993, the Vietnamese government separated the airline from the organization, and the airline would stand on its own as a state-owned enterprise operating as Vietnam Airlines. In the mid-1990s, the airline had 9 Tupolev 134s. These older Soviet planes were, however, in the process of being retired and phased out of the fleet. This process, though, would take several years. The plane registered as Victor November Alpha 120 in 1997 was still part of the active fleet at Vietnam Airlines. On September 3rd of that year, it would make a short flight between Ho Chi Minh City and the Cambodian capital of Phnom Penh in the early afternoon. Unlike other aircraft of its size, the Tupolev 134 required anywhere from 3 to 5 pilots to fly. There were 3 on board Flight 815. 59-year-old Captain Phnom Van Thieu was a pilot of 11,000 flight hours. Most of his time as a pilot was spent flying Soviet-era planes like the Tupolev. He did, however, hold a type rating to fly the Boeing 707. 49-year-old First Officer Hoang Van Dinh was much less experienced with just over 6,000 hours, nearly 4,000 of which were in this plane. The third member of the flight crew, 53-year-old flight engineer Lu Tan Tan, was also an experienced pilot. He, however, did not put in as many hours in the previous months compared to his work colleagues. In the cabin were 60 passengers and a further 3 crew members, for a total of 66 people on board, including the pilots. Flying as Flight 815, the Tupolev 134 left Ho Chi Minh City at around 1 p.m. local time. For most of the flight, the journey was uneventful. Things would begin to look more and more out of the ordinary once the plane closed in on Phnom Penh. To navigate to the Cambodian city, the pilots were supposed to be pointed in the right direction with the help of the VOR equipment at the airport. VOR, short for Very High Frequency Omnidirectional Range, is a piece of aviation technology often located at airports that can indicate the direction to the beacon relative to the plane. Pilots tune into the specific radio frequency it broadcasts a signal on and can follow it. It's an old piece of technology that many places across the world are in the process of phasing out. The VOR here was also equipped with distance measuring equipment, or DME, which basically gives an indication of distance. Just 2 months prior to the accident, various pieces of equipment at the airport were looted. Among these were the airport's VOR DME system, the equipment used to make meteorological observations, and the runway lighting. Although the accident report does indicate that by the time of the accident at least, runway lights were working normally. The airport and local authorities looked into replacing the necessary equipment, but could not afford the replacements. Instead, pilots needed to navigate with the help of an even older piece of navigational equipment called non-directional beacons. Non-directional beacons, or NDBs for short, much like VOR, cast out a radio frequency. Unlike VOR, as its name suggests, it does not provide directional information on its own. Still, pilots can tune into it and receive its identifying information via Morse code. That is why, in aviation, NDB navigation is often associated with two parts: the NDB transmitter and a piece of equipment on board a plane called an automatic direction finder, or ADF. This would allow an indication as to where the NDB is broadcasting from by simply pointing in the direction of the broadcast. By modern standards of navigation, it is archaic, but still, in cases such as this, it was a necessary backup. The pilots of Flight 815 tuned into the NDB station located around 5 kilometers west of the airport in Phnom Penh. In their approach, the flight crew requested lower altitudes from controllers. Given the lack of navigational aids in the area, communication between the incoming aircraft and air traffic control was pivotal. The pilots requested and approached the airport once reaching 5,000 feet of altitude. As stated previously, the VOR navigational equipment was not the only thing looted from the airport. The weather observation technology had also been stolen. The weather that day in Phnom Penh was atrocious. Following the accident, a dispute would arise between Vietnamese and Cambodian authorities, Vietnam pointing the finger at Cambodia, saying that weather would have been inaccurate because of this. As the plane kept descending, the controllers asked the pilots if they could see the airport, to which the response was no, they couldn't. The airport saw an increase in the number of missed approaches during the rainy season, which can last through till September. The pilots of Flight 815 would note to controllers that they had difficulty locating the airport, and so requested assistance from the ground. Initially, the pilots wanted to land on runway 23, the southwesterly approach. Air traffic control, however, instructed them to use runway 05, the northeastern-facing runway. The pilots did acknowledge this, and that was the last communication between the plane and the ground. And strangely, this suggestion from the controller was ignored. Eyewitnesses on the ground would testify that the plane approached from the east. The aircraft that was now at 2,000 feet began descending down towards the airport despite not having any visual contact with the runway. Flight 815 would descend without any airport or runway in sight all the way down to 200 feet. The first officer observing outside still could not see the runway, neither could the captain, but suggested that he pulls up and abort the landing. The flight engineer is also believed to have spoken up about the precarity of the approach. This was backed up by the retrieved cockpit voice recording. The captain, in response, would still continue the approach, disregarding the suggestions of the other flight crew members. He would take Flight 815 down to 100 feet, or just 30 meters above the ground. Still, even at this low altitude, there was no runway to be seen. The aircraft had now flown off course, left and short of the runway by still several hundreds of meters. First Officer Hoang Van Dinh again asked the captain to consider a missed approach. The time frame from these words from the first officer to disaster was just 4 seconds. In that time, the captain failed to evaluate the situation and take a corrective course of action. The plane's left wing struck a palm tree at just 14 meters above the ground. In this impact, the left engine also ceased functioning. The plane was so low to the ground, the right wing had also scraped the top of a house. According to sources that detailed eyewitness accounts, flames could now be observed from this first impact. As the plane inevitably came down due to its now uncontrollability following the impact with the tree, the aircraft skidded over the ground before exploding. The plane was obliterated. This photograph was taken soon thereafter. The area surrounding Phnom Penh's airport was not as urbanized at the time as it is today. Flight 815 had crashed into several rice fields, killing dozens of people. I say that because it is unclear exactly how many people survived the initial crash. Now, the following piece of information, if I have interpreted this correctly, might make your blood boil. Local police and military had apparently entered the crash site and proceeded to loot the area. This was then followed by local villagers. Of those who did help survivors, just 5 who were found to still be alive were rescued and taken to hospital. Among them were 2 children, one of them a 14-month-old infant from Thailand. As it would turn out, The young boy would be the only one to recover from their injuries, leaving him as the sole survivor of the crash. The other 4 died in hospital. Rescuers on the scene apparently did not have the resources necessary to save more people. The ongoing looting of the plane and the deceased also did not help matters in that regard. For the investigation, the looting proved to be a hurdle to uncovering what happened. Among the items stolen were the plane's flight recorders, of which there were actually 3 on board Flight 815. They were retrieved with the incentive of a financial reward for the item's return. The investigation, at least according to the Cambodian report, pinned the cause of the crash directly on the actions of the captain, evidenced by the lack of communication between not only the other flight crew members, but also controllers in that they failed to follow the controllers' instructions regarding the use of the runway. In their safety recommendations, the investigation highlights the importance of pilots following visual flight rules to not fly into poor weather. Navigation at Phnom Penh was also highly noted. The disaster of Flight 815 has so far been the last fatal accident to occur at Vietnam Airlines. Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching this week's video. If you found this video to be interesting, be sure to like and subscribe as there is a new video every Saturday. Speaking of new videos, last week we put out a poll. Basically, we're just wanting to see what interest there is in videos other than aviation. I am happy to say that work has begun on a video about a rail disaster that will be coming soon. Now, this will be sort of a pilot video to see how it will do. It will not take the place of regular content on a Saturday, and so will be an extra midweek video sometime in May. That being said, I want to take a moment to thank my amazing patrons over on my Patreon for their amazing support. Their names are scrolling on the screen right now, so if you see your name here, a massive thanks to you. Also, I want to give a big thanks, and I mean a big thanks, to new patron Yorick Bryanson, who pledged $50. I'm not sure how you did that, but thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it. If you want to get your name featured here at the end of the next video, you can join the Disaster Breakdown Patreon, which will be linked in the description and the pinned comment. From just £1 per month, you can get early access to all new content, 2 days before it goes out publicly on YouTube. My personal Twitter will also be in this video's description if you want to follow me on there. That's my primary social media outlet other than YouTube. Anyway, that is it for me today. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.